It may be low-hanging fruit, but when that fruit is poisoning the rest of the tree, it lends extra urgency to criticizing it. So I'm taking a dive down the rabbit hole of American politics to give my perspective on what should be obvious to virtually everyone, namely the fact that Donald Trump is an insidious and arguably unprecedented disgrace to the office and people he pretends to serve. I did not vote for Trump in 2016. I regretfully did not vote for Clinton either. I voted for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate. I felt like Republicans and Democrats had presented me with two evils, and at the time, I could not confidently decide which was really the lesser. I may have suspected that Trump was the worse of the two, but I thought the margin was much slimmer than it turned out to be. When Trump was elected, my gravest concern was for international relations, which I was almost certain he would sour. He's certainly done that, but given all that he's also done on the domestic front, that has turned out to be among the least of my concerns about the current administration. The Trump presidency has been a farce brought horribly to life, a shameful and perilous flirtation with authoritarian impulses, emboldened by the rampant sycophancy of Republican leaders and legislators, who have overwhelmingly put party over country. I'm fond of describing Donald Trump as the bizarre love child of Lex Luthor and Donald Duck. He blends the xenophobia, narcissism, and greed of the former with the thin skin, dimwit, and pettiness of the latter. In fact, the one thing saving us from far worse consequences of Trump's megalomania may be his sheer intellectual deficiency. If Trump could trade the hairs on his head for IQ points, he would become simultaneously bald and much more intelligent, and his resemblance to Lex Luthor in particular would thus become uncanny indeed. Now, why do I view Donald Trump in such pejorative tones? For many, especially in my audience, it may seem obvious why he is deserving of such ridicule and condemnation, but I think it's worth it to step back and take stock of the specific reasons we have. And there are plenty, so for whatever it's worth, here is my attempt to comprehensively summarize the many vices and transgressions of Donald John Trump. He has refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the 2020 election, threatening to challenge the results. He has preemptively endeavored to suppress votes in targeted areas and undermine the legitimacy of the 2020 election. He has repeatedly expressed respect and/or admiration of other world leaders whose dictatorial manner of governance is fundamentally antithetical to democratic rule of law. He has repeatedly lied to the press and to the U.S. citizenry, often in ways that are very easy to catch and debunk. He has continued to engage in foreign business entanglements and other suspicious financial activity, which may make him susceptible to illicit leverage. He has attempted in multiple ways and on multiple occasions to obstruct a lawful investigation into his administration, in some cases successfully. He has solicited a pledge of fealty from at least one government agency director and appointed those suspiciously friendly to his interests in multiple government positions. He has suppressed and/or obstructed the lawfully solicited testimony of officials in his administration who were likely privy to unfavorable information. He has attempted and sometimes succeeded at punishing or at least threatening public officials who have testified regarding the conduct of his administration. He has trusted the word of a world leader known to have interfered in at least one U.S. election over that of his country's own intelligence agencies. He has expressed a willingness to solicit and/or accept foreign interference in U.S. elections and a lack of concern over the meddling that has already taken place. He has attempted to extort an allied government into helping him foster public distrust of a major political challenger. He has at least allowed, if not enabled, his friends and/or family to benefit financially from his office, to the point of filling multiple White House jobs nepotistically. He has mishandled the COVID-19 pandemic and spread dangerous misinformation, contributing to the unusually high death rate in the U.S. relative to other developed nations. He has shown great disrespect to veterans, including at least one former POW as well as the metal-laden son of a political rival who was already deceased at the time. He has shown great disrespect for poor and developing nations, particularly those dominated by dark-skinned ethnicities. He has demeaned women, mocked the disabled, and given belittling nicknames to rivals and/or critics belonging to ethnic minorities. He has withdrawn from an important nuclear disarmament deal with a foreign country known to have a troubled relationship with the U.S. He has withdrawn from an important international accord to address climate change, greatly endangering long-term posterity for the sake of short-term protectionism. He has repeatedly failed to denounce white supremacists, from whose support he tacitly benefits, and who have often been emboldened by his lack of denouncement. He has separated immigrant children from their families at the border and locked them in cages, finally releasing them only under extreme public pressure. He has pursued an egotistical vendetta against the Affordable Care Act, the repeal of which would deprive millions of health insurance. He has pursued economic policies that disproportionately if not exclusively benefit the extremely wealthy while inflating the national budget deficit in the process. He has at least tried to implement a broad ban on Muslim immigration based largely on ethnic and/or religious bigotry rather than data on the distribution of terroristic inclinations. In general, Donald Trump is a dim-witted, thin-skinned, bigoted, and narcissistic plutocrat. He clearly entered the presidency with a poor understanding of presidential power and the limits thereof, expecting to have prerogatives and latitudes that are perhaps comparable to those of a CEO, entrepreneur, or business owner. This might be forgivable if only he showed some willingness to learn and adapt, but he has in fact done the exact opposite. Rather than adjust his expectations and demeanor to suit the office, he seems determined to expand the office to match his demands and sense of entitlement. The result is a commander-in-chief who selfishly and recklessly indulges authoritarian impulses, thus shifting the standards of executive behavior in a disconcertingly anti-democratic direction. His reaction to attempts at reinforcing important boundaries is often begrudging, indignant, or downright rebellious. In administration officials and other government agents, he prizes loyalty to him as a person more than he prizes loyalty to the United States as a nation. He responds to dissent and/or criticism in ways that would not seem at all out of place in a dictator's playbook. He is all too willing to subvert the political neutrality of federal justice and law enforcement agencies. Furthermore, when it serves his interests, he seems perfectly willing to sow discord and/or spread information which is poorly vetted at best and blatantly false at worst. In addition to his vices on the domestic front, Trump has withdrawn from at least 2 important international agreements, soured our relationship with multiple allies, and overall wreaked havoc on the international standing of the U.S. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, please consider subscribing and/or leaving a comment. Also, if you haven't already, vote. Seriously, it wasn't the time for complacency in 2016, and it's even less so now in 2020. Vote. For the love of country, vote.